Hello everyone, welcome to the Taxiway Podcast, your main terminal for Las Vegas Aviators baseball. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow if you're on Spotify or subscribe if you're listening or watching on YouTube. I'm your host Fabian, and today we'll be talking about the bullpen for the Las Vegas Aviators this season. The Aviators, during this offseason, acquired 12 relievers on a minor league deal. Now, it's before spring training. We're still in the offseason, so this may change because during spring training, maybe some of these guys might get bumped onto the main roster. And so just based on what I have here, I'm just going to go over these guys and give a quick prediction of where these guys might go. So we're going to be doing this alphabetically. The first guy that we have is Nick Anderson. He's a righty, and he was signed on a minor league deal this offseason. Last season, he split time between the Rockies and the Isotopes, which are their AAA affiliate, before signing with the Mariners in September. And fun fact, he actually played against the Aviators in the PCL Championship with the Rainiers. And during the playoffs, he only allowed 3 hits and 1 earned run over both postseason games. So in both games, he made an appearance, and he seemed to stifle the Aviators. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how he does with the Aviators instead of against them. And so last season in the minors, he had a 5.26 ERA, 2 wins, 2 losses over 38 games in 39 and 1/3 innings pitched. He had 48 strikeouts and a 1.45 whip. And looking at his splits here, he had a lower average, so lefties were getting a little less lucky with him compared to the righties. He did a lot better against righties overall. He had 32 and 2/3 innings against righties, and he had 38 strikeouts against them. So even though righties had a better overall average against him, it might just be because of the amount of righties that he faced, and not necessarily that he performed worse against righties. In his arsenal, he has a fastball, a curveball, and a changeup. And he uses that fastball more often than not. Almost half of the time, he'll be using that fastball. And then we're going to move on to the next pitcher. We got Ben Bowden. He's returning to the Aviators. He re-signed with the Athletics in November. He's a lefty, and he's looking to bounce back after his season was cut short last season from injury. And so my prediction is that if he replicates what he did with the Aviators last season during spring training or maybe even during the minor league season, if he does what he does best, then I think he'll get called back up to the major league club. So last season he had 1 win and 1 loss, 1.36 ERA in 31 games, and across 39 and 2/3 innings pitched with 41 strikeouts and a 1.13 whip. So he wasn't allowing a lot of traffic on base. And if we look at how he did in August, he actually had a pretty good August. He actually had a pretty good August. For the month of August, he had a 3.12 ERA, and hitters were just hitting .167 against him. He had 7 strikeouts over 8 and 2/3 innings, so he actually did pretty good in the month of August before he got injured. And if we look at his splits, he did pretty good, and these splits are not from his time in the majors, but from, I guess it's a combination of both what he did in the majors and in the minors. But regardless, he did pretty good against lefties and righties. So it didn't matter against who, he dominated. So he did pretty good in pressure situations as well, like in scoring position. 15 innings in scoring with runners in scoring position, and hitters were only hitting .226 against him and a 1.24 whip, 7 walks and 14 strikeouts. So that shows us that he did pretty good with runners in scoring position, and that's really what you want from a bullpen piece, especially if you're going to be in the later innings, or if you get in a jam, you want to be that guy that the manager calls upon to really quench the fires. In his arsenal, he has a fastball, a slider, and a changeup. And same story with Bowden. He'll be using that fastball most of the time. And his fastball tops out around 93, slider around 84, and the change is the same, about 84. So he definitely not a flamethrower by any means, but he definitely has the stuff to make an impact. Next we have is J.J. Goss, another new acquisition for the Aviators or for the Athletics. J.J. Goss is a righty entering his age 25 season. He spent last year with the Montgomery Biscuits, and if you've never heard of that team before, they are part of the Tampa Bay Rays. They are the AA affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays. Last season, J.J. Goss did not finish the season due to injury. In his arsenal, he has a fastball, a slider, and a curve. And I would provide you what his velocities are, but being the minor league, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get that information. So we're just going to have to see for ourselves once he gets up here. Last season, he finished the season with a 3.38 ERA in 33 games and 40 innings pitched, 31 strikeouts, and a 1.03 ERA. And 31 strikeouts, he used to be a starter before being a reliever. He transitioned as a starter in 2024, and there he had a massive improvement. But the 31 strikeouts is actually his career high as being a reliever. So if he continues that success, then we should be in for a treat. Looking at his last month, technically he had one appearance in August, but it was only just one, so I don't really want to include that here. But if we look at July, he has a 2.79 ERA for the month of July in 9 2/3 innings pitched with 3 runs and 3 earned runs. So he actually did pretty good, and batters were only hitting .206 off of him, so not a lot of success against him in the month of August. And he actually had multiple inning appearances in August. He had 3 2-inning appearances. So even when he was in there for more than an inning, he was still having great success. And then if we look at his splits, he was mostly used in the 8th and 9th innings. However, it seems like JJ has a love-hate relationship with the setup role. He has the most of his innings were in the 8th inning, but he has a 4.76 when he enters there with 17 hits and 17 strikeouts. So he got 3 17s, but he just doesn't like the setup role. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see where they're going to use him. But if it's not the 8th inning, I'd assume it's the 7th or 9th, because the 8th inning just seems to be a little bit of kryptonite for him. In the 7th inning, he had a 3.6 ERA in 6 games and 5 innings. So way less innings, way less games in the 7th inning. Hitters were only hitting .211 on him. 2 runs allowed, 1 home run, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. However, in the 9th inning, a 1.62 ERA in 19 games, 16 and 2/3 innings. So the second most amount of innings for him last season was in the 9th inning, and he had 8 strikeouts, and hitters were hitting a microscopic .096 against him. So that's practically untouchable. And a very low whip as well, .66, so very low traffic and not allowing a lot of runs either. So we could see him as a closer as well. And as a closer, he converted 14 of 17 saves, so he only blew 3, But if you're only missing 3 out of that many, that's actually a pretty good success rate. So I really wouldn't be surprised if the Aviators try him as a closer. And the next pitcher that we have up is Geoff Hartlieb, a righty in his age 32 season. Jeff, not Jeff, and what I mean is not Jeff, but the other spelling, Geoff. So Geoff Hartlieb. So last season, he practically lived out of his suitcase last year. He started the year in New York with the Yankees, and then he was sent down to their AAA affiliate, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders. And then he was shipped to Toledo, the Detroit AAA affiliate, and then ended his season with the Kansas City Royals AAA affiliate, the Omaha Storm Chasers. And what do you know? We're actually going to be facing the Omaha Storm Chasers this season. So if Jeff is still on the team when we do face him, then it'll be a nice little reunion for him. So we're going to see how he did last season. Last season, he finished with a 4.39 ERA in the minors, but an astounding 21.6 ERA in the majors. But don't let that fool you. He may have only allowed a few runs in the majors, but he only had 3 innings pitched, so that's why his ERA seems so inflated. So maybe there was only a couple of bad innings for him up in the majors, and that's why the numbers seem a lot worse than they actually are. So let's be fair to Jeff. But we're going to be focusing on his tenure in the minors, since that's where he spent most of his season last season. Let's see how he did in his last month of appearances. So in the month of September, he had a 3.18 ERA in 5 2/3 innings pitched with 2 earned runs and hitters hitting .300 against him with a 1.59 ERA. So not too shabby down in the majors, in the minors. If we look at his splits, he actually fared a lot better against lefties and righties, and it's not even close. Lefties only hitting .220 off of him, although he had a lot more strikeouts against righties. So 20 strikeouts with lefties and 39 strikeouts with righties. 24 2/3 innings pitched against lefties and 31 2/3 innings pitched against righties. So that could also be a factor that he faced a lot more righties than lefties. We can also take a look at how he did in the innings that he was utilized. He had a lot of success in the 4th and 5th inning. He also did a lot better in the 7th inning. So 7th inning had a 3.86 ERA in 11 2/3 innings, only allowing 5 earned runs. Hitters only hitting .302 against him with 12 strikeouts. Now, if I would think that he does, the ERA also is a little bit deceiving here, because in the 9th inning, he has a 4.5 ERA in 15 games in 14 innings pitched, allowing 14 hits, 7 earned runs, and 2 home runs, and 19 strikeouts, with hitters only hitting .255 against him. So he has less of a lower ERA in the 7th compared to the 9th, but hitters are having less success against him with a lower average. So I assume that he might be maybe a middle reliever, or they might try to swap him in there every so often to close out a game here and there. Next we're going to go over is, actually before we go there, let's actually take some time to look at his arsenal. His arsenal is a slider, a fastball, and a sinker, and he primarily relies on that slider, which he uses around 61% of the time. So he saw a little bit more success in 2025 after having a rough 2024. He had 7 less earned runs, less walks, and he tied his career second best with 62 strikeouts. And as I was looking through these numbers, I was wondering, why was his average against a lot higher than in 2024? And as I was looking through the numbers, I saw that his BABIP was a lot higher than in 2024. So that might be why batters seem to be getting on a lot more last season. So he had a .374 BABIP this year compared to a .331 last year. All right, and now let's go on to Brooks Kriske, righty, age 31. So he started the year with the Iowa Cubs. Then he was promoted to the Chicago Cubs, but after some shaky performances, he ended up getting DFA'd by the Cubs. So after some time, the Minnesota Twins ended up signing him to a minor league deal, but he didn't do so well with them in the MLB and ended up getting sent down to the St. Paul Saints, the Twins' AAA affiliate. So this season, he's looking to do a little bit to continue his success at the AAA level, but he's going to look to cement his success in the major league level. Looking at his numbers for last year in the minors in 2025, he had a 3.38 ERA across 26 games in 34 2/3 innings with 55 strikeouts and a 1.15 whip. And I think Mr. Kriske felt a lot more at home with the Cubs organization because he had a 3.31 ERA with the Cubs as opposed to a 6 ERA with the St. Paul Saints. Also, batters were not having a ton of success against him in Iowa versus in St. Paul. However, you can also argue that the reason why it looks that way is because he had 31 2/3 innings with the Iowa Cubs compared to a mere 3 innings pitched with the St. Paul Saints. So, like I said, if you don't pay attention to the details, a lot of these numbers can look a lot worse than they really are. So, we can say that he had less success with the Twins organization, but we can also say that he didn't pitch a lot for them either. So, it's just across the board, he wasn't able to do as well as he would have liked at the major league level, and that's why he ended up getting sent down both times. So for Mr. Kriske, last season, or this past season, I'm sorry, I'm still trying to transition into 2026. So for this past season, in 2025, he ended up having lower strikeouts and a higher BABIP. So he wasn't lucky, and unlucky could be a great way to describe his 2025. So he had 73 strikeouts, and that combines both his major league and his minor league strikeouts versus the 81 strikeouts that he had in 2024. But in that season, he spent the whole season in the minor league, so it wouldn't really be fair to compare those two stats either. And he also had less innings pitched in 2025 than in 2024. But if we take a look at his last month of work, ended the month with a 5 ERA in 5 games in 6 innings pitched, and he allowed 4 earned runs and batters hitting a .292 against him. In the month of September, he also had 2 stints with the Twins. One was against the Chicago White Sox, where he didn't allow any runs, which is pretty good. And then in his second one against the Royals, he went 2 innings and he only allowed 2 earned runs. So like I said, I mean, it's not like Kriske was absolutely terrible with the Twins. It just happens that, maybe he just had a couple of middle of the road outings, and maybe the Twins just had a much packed they probably had a lot more arms that the Twins wanted to try out than wanting to continue to experiment with Kriske. But nonetheless, Kriske has a fastball, a cutter, a splitter, a slider, and a changeup. And his fastball tops out around 94, cutter around 86, the splitter at 82, slider at 84, and a changeup at 85. Now let's take a look at his splits. He did a lot better against righties, and he actually had an identical amount of innings pitched against both lefties and righties. He did a lot better against righties. Righties, he had 34 strikeouts. What I mean by better is he was able to limit the averages against righties and lefties, but if you want to compare it by walks, he had less walks against lefties, more strikeouts against lefties, allowed less home runs than lefties, but he also allowed a lot more hits. So I guess you could debate like what you mean by better. Like if you want to strike people out, then maybe you might send him against a lefty in certain situations, but righties just had a tougher time getting hits against him. He also did pretty good in the 8th inning. The 8th and 9th inning were his bread and butter, basically. 8th inning had a 1.8 ERA in 10 innings pitched, and only allowing 2 earned runs. However, if you put him in the 6th and 7th inning, he has a significantly higher ERA in the 6th and 7th inning. 7th inning, in 13 innings pitched, he allowed 8 runs, but batters are only hitting .78 against him in the 7th. In the 9th inning, he had limited experience, but in 7 2/3 innings in the 9th inning, he only allowed 1 run, and hitters were only hitting .207 against him. So if it were me, I guess it just depends on the situation. It really depends on the situation. But I can see him as an 8th inning, maybe 9th inning guy. But we're going to go more into my predictions later. Matt Krook, lefty, age 31 season. Funnily enough, Matt Krook actually started last season with the Aviators, but then he got called up to the main club, the Athletics, in May. He had 2 solid performances, but then a not-so-good third appearance, and after that not-so-good third appearance, he ended up getting DFA'd. After he got DFA'd, he got picked up by the Cleveland Guardians, where he remained on their AAA affiliate for the rest of the year. For the 2025 season, Matt Krook had a 3.19 ERA across 48 innings and a 1.33 WHIP. He also had a career-high 62 Ks since switching from being a reliever since being a starting pitcher in 2023. So before 2023, he was a starting pitcher, and then since then, he converted into being a reliever. And this season, he induced more ground balls and he had less traffic on base, which is pretty good and what you want to see. He also had a phenomenal September, a 0 ERA for the month of September in 6 innings pitched, and also 5 strikeouts and a .167 average against. So he was practically untouchable for the month of September. And if we take a look at his splits, he has success against both lefties and righties, and he's also shown to excel in pressure situations. Because in 15 1/3 innings of a base runner being in scoring position, he actually has 22 strikeouts, and hitters are only hitting .246 against him. So I wouldn't doubt that he gets used as a high leverage reliever or something along those lines. If we look at the innings breakdown, he actually did fairly well in the 8th inning and in the 7th inning. In the 7th inning, he has a 3.72 ERA across 19 innings pitched, and hitters only hitting .182 off of him, allowing 8 earned runs and 11 strikeouts. However, in the 8th inning, he actually does a lot better with a 1.35 ERA across 13 innings, only allowing 2 runs and 13 strikeouts. So he could be a setup guy. And we can take a moment to just pause and look at his arsenal. He has a sinker, a slider, a cutter, and a changeup. For the the cutter, he'll top out around 86, a sinker around 89, a slider around 82, and a changeup at 84. And he loves to rely on that sinker, using it around 34% of the time. Next we have is Joel Kuhnel, righty, age 30. And he started the year with Lehigh Valley, the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. They are the AAA affiliate of the Philadelphia Phillies, and he was then released by them. The Yankees ended up signing him to a minor league deal, and he spent the rest of the season with Scranton Wilkes-Barre. In 2025, he had a 3.53 ERA in 63 2/3 innings with 56 strikeouts and a 1.18 whip. He actually tied his career high in strikeouts with 56. However, he also allowed more home runs this past season than the year before. Now, if we take a look at his last several appearances, in the month of September, he finished it with a 2.84 ERA with 6 1/3 innings pitched. He also allowed 2 earned runs during this stretch, and hitters were only hitting .238. So again, he had a phenomenal end to the season. It seems like he had the most success in the 7th and 8th innings. In the 7th inning, he had a 1.23 ERA in 14 2/3 innings, only allowing 2 earned runs, with 14 strikeouts, and hitters only hitting .137 against him. The 8th inning, an unbelievable .82 ERA across 11 innings pitched, and only allowing 1 earned run with 10 strikeouts, and hitters hitting .295 against him. So higher average, but still not allowing a lot of action on the across the plate. Now, if we take a look at his arsenal here, he has a sinker, a slider, a four-seamer, a changeup, and a curveball, but he relies mostly on that sinker. And he'll top out around 95 in velocity. The next pitcher that we have is Domingo Robles, another lefty, age 27. So Domingo Robles enters his 3rd season with the Athletics organization, and he's looking to bounce back after a shaky season. Looking at his transaction reports, it's possible that he had an injury because it was shown that he was placed on a rehab assignment, but it's not clear on if that was the case and if that's why he had a late start. So if he did have an injury, that could be why his performance was shaky last season. So it goes that you'll see that this is a common occurrence where there isn't a lot of information available sometimes. So for 2025, he ended the year with a 4.04 ERA in 14 games, in 42 1/3 innings pitched with 38 strikeouts and a 1.13 whip. For the month of September, he had a 3.0 .86 ERA in 11 2/3 innings, and batters hitting .227 against him. And he only made one appearance for the Aviators. It was in 1 1/3 innings, and he only allowed one earned run with one strikeout. So not too bad with 2 walks. Not a bad first impression. Hitters only having a .200 average against him. Now, if we take a look at the splits, he fared a lot better against righties. They only had a .208 average against him with 23 strikeouts. And he only allowed one home run against them, so that's actually pretty good. With runners in scoring position, across 13 innings, no home runs, he didn't hit anybody, and he only walked 2 with 9 strikeouts, so he actually did pretty good against batters while there's runners in scoring position. But my main question for Mr. Robles and the Aviators organization, or the athletics organization, is, are they going to want to use him as a 6th starter? Because he does have experience starting, and because of his injury, we don't know if they're trying to build him up to start again. So I wouldn't be surprised if they use him as a long reliever for now. But that's one of the questions that we'll have to wait for an answer for, to see if they want him to transition into a reliever, or if they're going to want to build him back up into being a starter. From these numbers here, if they were to transition him into being a reliever, I do think that he would have the most success either being a middle reliever or possibly a setup guy. Middle reliever, because in the fifth inning, across 6 innings pitched, he only allowed 2 earned runs, and hitters were only hitting .105 against him. In the 6th inning, he had a 3.86 ERA, 7 innings, only allowing 3 earned runs. Hitters only hitting .296 against him. And in the 8th inning, a 0 ERA in 3 innings pitched. And batters only having a .182 average against him. So either middle reliever or setup. That's where I see him. Next we have is Gustavo Rodgriguez. He's a righty in his age 24 season, and last season actually quickly rose to the A's system. He was basically untouchable the last month of the season, and including the postseason. But before we get into that, he ended 2025 with a 1.64 ERA across 44 innings pitched with 52 strikeouts and a 1.09 whip. So last season, he was in Lancaster with their high A, Midland in the double A, and then had, I guess, at least halfway of the season with the Aviators. And if you compare his BABIP to last season, he has a way lower BABIP than in 2024. In 2024, he had a .363 BABIP compared to a .223 BABIP. And if you want to narrow it down even more, specifically with the Aviators, he had a .237 BABIP. So I don't know if you can just credit that to really, really good defense, because it seems like every other pitcher that we've been talking about, if they were on the Aviators last season, had a lower BABIP than usual. So probably that Aviators defense was just that good. Either the Aviators defense was that good, or was he just really that unlucky in 2024? You be the judge of that. So in the month of September, for the regular season, a 0 ERA. 0. 7 innings. So, and just to even have a broader perspective on how crazy this is, he had a multiple inning performance against the Reno Aces in Reno, which is a pretty unforgiving place. Only allowed 2 hits, 1 strikeout, so phenomenal in Reno. And then they come back to Vegas on September 19th, which was the last regular season game for him. 0 earned runs against him, 1 hit. I mean, granted he walked 3, but he also had 6 strikeouts. So imagine every single batter that he faced on that day, strikeout. Well, minus the walks. But if you weren't walking against him, and if you weren't that one guy that got a hit, you got struck out. So he did it all by himself on that day. So ended the season of the month of September with a 0 ERA, 7 innings pitched, only allowing 3 hits in 5 appearances. Only hit 1 guy, walked 4, and had 11 strikeouts. So he was absolutely dominant in the month of September. Now, if we want to go to his playoff performance, it was equally as great. 0 ERA in 2 appearances. The one against Tacoma, he went 2 innings, only allowed 1 hit, no strikeouts, but that's fine. But also no walks. So very limited traffic. And then the next one in the AAA championship against Jacksonville, one inning, and he didn't allow any hits, no earned runs, no walks, and 1 strikeout. And these guys were not having any success against him. And if you weren't there, you missed out. So if the Aviators make it to the playoffs again this year, I'd really recommend that you go and watch it, because it was absolutely phenomenal having to watch these guys play. Especially in the AAA championship, them being behind way down and then flip it in the last inning. I mean, ultimately they lost, but it was still a great game. So I'd really recommend watching them if they make it to the playoffs this season. Before we move on to the next batter, just quickly going over his splits, Mr. Rodriguez's splits. Honestly, it didn't matter if you placed him against a righty or a lefty. He was going to dominate you. He had more strikeouts against righties. Also walked a lot more righties. But it's not fair. It's just not fair. Facing against Domingo Rodriguez. Gustavo Rodriguez last season. It just wasn't fair. Let's see. 9th inning, when he was utilizing that closer role in 16 innings of work, a 0 ERA. Again, 0. 0. Walked 5, 22 strikeouts. Like, tell me you're a closer without telling me you're a closer. I am, like, if this guy does not get a roster spot this season, that's going to be highway robbery. So if Gustavo can do really good in spring training and he's doing this, I think that they're going to get him on the 40-man. Either that or somebody's going to get hurt and then he'll get his opportunity. But I really wish that nobody would get hurt, because that's devastating. That's a horrible way to get a spot. And obviously we don't wish anybody any bad performances. We want everybody to do good. But this man deserves a roster spot. He absolutely deserves it. His fastball is going to top out on 96. Same thing with the sinker. The sinker is going to touch 97. Slider around 84, curveball 82, and his changeup at 87. So you're going to see a lot of variety. So he can speed people up with the sinker, and then he can slow them way down with that curveball all the way to 82. Imagine that's more than 10 miles an hour difference between his fastest pitch and his slowest pitch. Like, how can you even hit that? How? Like, that's why baseball is the hardest sport, because of stuff like this. Like, it's not fair. It's just not fair. And last but not least, well, we have Wander Suero, righty, age 34. All right, so if you've noticed a trend, the Aviators picked up a lot of veteran guys. But we'll go into that deeper later. Wander Suero ended 2025 with a 1.29 ERA in the minor league level. In MLB, he had an 11.37 ERA, but like I said, he only had 6.1 innings pitched, so maybe just one bad outing where he allowed multiple runs, but like the ERA looks a lot worse than it is just because of the amount of innings that he pitched. But in the minor league level, he struck out 64, while in the majors, he only struck out 7. Mr. Suero, his nickname is the Animal, by the way. And I don't know what you have to do in order to be called the Animal, but I kind of don't want to find out. But on the same coin, I kind of do. Last season, Mr. Suero, he converted 13 out of 14 save opportunities, so he was pretty effective in that closer role. He also had a .301 BABIP total for 2025. And then let's take a look at his splits really quickly. He did a lot better against righties, absolutely dominating the righties. 49 strikeouts, 9 walks, allowing 3 home runs, 21 hits. Had a lot more appearances against righties as well, but not by much. And 9 walks, but that's not, like, he had 8 against lefties. So he just had a little bit more trouble against lefties. So I would definitely use him only against righties, but it's not like, actually I shouldn't say that yet. I would say, like, it's not like we have a lot of lefty dominated teams, but I haven't had a chance to take a deeper look into that. So when I do look at that, then we'll see. But just taking a brief look at his arsenal: a fastball, a cutter, a sinker, changeup, slider, and a curveball. His fastest pitch would be his cutter at 92, and his sinker and fastball are right around the same. And like I said about baseball being unfair, 3 pitches that have just about the same velocity but way different movement. One, if you're a righty, is going to cut right into your hands. The sinker's going to go away from you. And obviously the fastball, I mean, is just going to, depending on the command, I mean, it's just going to be right where it is. So, like, how can you even go up against that? That's why I have so much respect for these guys who even make it to the AA, AAA, because, like, that's just hard. But yeah, so that's all of our relievers for 2026. But like I said before, spring training hasn't started, so we don't know who will get invited to spring training to the Athletics, because if they get invited to the spring training, right, and they do extremely well, there is a chance that they could make the 40-man roster and go to the major league club instead of starting the season down here with Vegas. So I'll keep you in the loop of when that happens, but just based on what I have here, based on the numbers, based on previous appearances. So my long reliever option would be Domingo Robles, mostly because of that starting pitching experience. So if one of our starters that we talked about last episode does horrendously, or there's an injury or something like that, we can see Robles step into that role, see if, get a couple of a large chunk of innings from him. And then in the middle, that's where I had a hard time, because we have a lot of guys that would be great in the middle. I would say Hartlieb. So you either get him earlier into the game, or you put him in the 9th inning, right? Matt Krook in the middle. He's pretty versatile, so you could put him anywhere. He does well against lefties. He does well in high leverage. So in the middle, Krook, I think he would do well. Kuhnel, I think, would do great as a middle reliever. And then the only reason why I say JJ Goss here, I know he does well as a closer, or you throw him into the 7th inning, right? And I know he can't be a setup guy. I mean, not can't, but he has had trouble in the past as a setup guy. So the reason why I say you put him in as a middle reliever is maybe you want to build him up to get that experience with AAA talent. And then if he does well, you put him in the closer role, or you put him in the high leverage roles to see how he does. That's my perspective on it. You just start him off as a middle reliever, see how he does. If he does well, promote him. Now for my setup guys, and for setup, these guys, they can either be the closer, or they can be setup, or they could be, I wouldn't say high leverage, because that's only reserved for a couple of guys. So setup guys, I think they could also be closers. So I think, especially in AAA level, I think closer and setup guys could possibly be interchanged depending on the situation. But for setup, definitely Ben Bowden, but he could also be a great closer. So that's not taking anything away from him. He can do both. Kriske, he does well. He has a lot of strikeout stuff, but he does really good when there's nobody on base. And also, I've seen that when he was in the 9th inning, things tended to get out of hand, and he did have a higher ERA in the 9th. So that's why I would kind of want him to be a setup guy. Wander Suero could be a great setup guy. He could also be a great closer. And especially in AAA, you want people to have a lot of reps everywhere. So you could see him bounce back and forth from setup to closer. And then Nick Anderson. So for Nick Anderson, you either get him in there early in the game, or you have him as a closer, because in previous appearances, if you have him as a closer, he doesn't do well. So either setup or in the middle. That's what I say for Nick. I either setup or in the middle. And so that's pretty much what I have for you today. If you enjoyed, please follow if you're on Spotify, or subscribe if you're on YouTube. Give it a like. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. And I hope you enjoyed. And as always, my name's Fabian. This has been the Taxiway Podcast, and I hope you have a great day.